But alright guys, that was the Evil 5. Now let's move on to the next villain team. The next villain team that I'm going to be introducing is Villainous crew. I'm going to be explaining the origin story, where I got the ideas from, and of course explaining the superpowers of these characters. And I also will say these characters, these villains, are actually villains for the Pirate Penguins. Alright, so the first character that I'm going to introduce is Captain Villainous, and of course his real name is Vincent Walter. And of course, I already explained his origin story in the first Pirate Penguins video, if you guys want to go check that out. This is my drawing of Captain Villainous that I drew in my journal. Again, not that good at drawing, and also I accidentally gave him a hat. He's not supposed to, I mean, just pretend that the hat is not there, okay? Like, just pretend that's his hair, but yeah, this is my drawing. Next character is Alien Fish. Now, Alien Fish, he's obviously an alien fish type of creature that's half alien fish and half robot, like robotic parts, that's part of his body. I'll explain his origin story in a minute. This is my drawing of Alien Fish. This is obviously what I probably want him to look like. Like, these two things back here are supposed to be like his dorsal fins, like on his back. But of course I couldn't really get it right. But it looks alright. Next character is this character Eagle. And his real name is Richard Roman. I'll explain his origin story in a minute. Next character is Eagle. Again, I tried my best to draw it right, but this is what I want him to look like. Looks fine. Last but not least is this character, Polar Bear. And his real name is Rick Roman. And I'll explain his origin story in a minute. Last but not least is Polar Bear. This one looks okay and looks pretty cool. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and tell you guys where I got the ideas from. First up is Captain Villainous. What inspired me to create this character was one time I went to a show at my church one time where they were doing like this pirate show called like Captain Longbeard, and originally Captain Villainous, he was going to be called Captain Longbeard, but I did not like that name because it was too goofy, so I wanted to pick something like more evil and sinister, and I decided to name him Captain Villainous. And of course, you guys obviously seen my Pirate Penguins video where I basically say the Pirate Penguins is technically the Ninja Turtles. I wanted to create a villain that's basically their version of Shredder. Next character is Alien Fish. Now, what inspired me to create this character was Krang from the Ninja Turtles and Cyborg from Teen Titans. But I obviously wanted to create the Pirate Penguins version of Krang. So yeah, that's technically what I did. Last but not least is Eagle and Polar Bear. Now, what inspired me to create these two characters was obviously Bebop and Rocksteady. But like when I was creating Polar Bear, and when I was creating Polar Bear, like I wanted like the Pirate Penguins to fight a villain that's like part of like the frozen or like icy lands. And of course I obviously wanted the penguins to fight another bird character, and of course the character Eagle. Now of course Villainous crew, where I come up with that team name. Basically, you know, like Captain Villainous, he's the leader of this team. Technically that's, I wanted to take his name and be part of that team name, Villainous crew. But alright, time for the origin story. Now, Captain Villainous, I already explained his origin story in the first video of the Pirate Penguins. If you guys want to go check that out, go ahead and go rewatch that. But you guys know in that video I explained that Captain Villainous, he's the one responsible for creating the Pirate Penguins, and he was trying to make them evil. But yeah, go watch that video if you want to know a little bit about the origin about Captain Villainous. Alright, obviously next up is Alien Fish. Alien Fish is obviously an alien from a different planet. He crash landed on Earth, and then he ends up meeting Captain Villainous. And Alien Fish actually has a cloning machine that can actually clone the robot skeletons that Captain Villainous has. Instead of building more and more skeletons, Captain Villainous uses the cloning machine that Alien Fish gave to him. Which is also why the robot skeletons are also going to be in the Race Saviors, Super Spirit X, and they're just going to be like, they're going to be more like side villains, more like the Foot Clan a little bit. Next characters are Eagle and Polar Bear. Now these are two characters that work for Captain Longbeard. They work with him, and they were actually in jail. They were in prison one time, and Captain Villainous wanted two villains, two bad people to work with him, and so he ends up breaking those two people out of jail, Rick Roman and Richard Roman. And Captain Villainous uses Eagle DNA and Polar Bear DNA to put it inside of them to turn them into mutated Eagle and Polar Bear human animals. I don't really have too much backstory about Eagle and Polar Bear, but that's kind of all I have. Alright guys, that was Villainous crew. Now let's move on to the next villain team.